Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. News and views on Salam Media with me, Julie Ali. And we start off by looking at the situation in the Ukraine. It is 6 months since the Russians have invaded Ukraine, and today marks the 31st anniversary, the Independence Day celebrations in the Ukraine. Sadly, they are still under heavy siege by the Russian invasion. And we are told that the Ukrainian capital has banned public events celebrating the 31st anniversary of independence from the Soviet rule, citing threat of renewed Russian attacks. So let's talk with the Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, and that is Lyubov Abravitova. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. Nice to have you on the show.
Good morning, Julian. Thank you for having me. Good morning, listeners.
Must be mixed feelings, mixed blessings for you. You are in South Africa. You know what is happening in the Ukraine. You know that your people are totally under siege by the Russians. Today is meant to be a day of high celebration for the Ukrainian people. But 6 months on, the Russians have not stopped the invasion of killing innocent men, women, and children, and decimating cities and towns in the Ukraine.
This year, when we are marking 31st anniversary of independence, of re-establishment of Ukraine's independence, basically, we understand and feel this date even being more important than ever. Uh, yes, Russians are continuing their brutal, unprovoked war in Ukraine, on the Ukrainian territory, on the sovereign territory of independent state, killing our civilians, destroying our um, infrastructure and economy. And this is the deliberate uh, measures and things that they are doing today. We today celebrating independence, not only of Ukraine, but we are celebrating our struggle for every country to be able to be independent. And that is why the interest and the congratulations that are coming from all parts of the world are really motivating us. But it's not to celebrate. Motivation is not to celebrate. Motivation is not to know the value of this independence, of sovereignty, of territorial integrity. My people today know it, they feel it, I feel it. We know the price that we are paying for it. And yes, it's completely different meaning, not only for Ukraine, but for all Ukrainians. We resist for 6 months. Russia cannot anymore go forward with taking over new territories and just trying to protect those territories that are seized. Meantime, we understand that on the 24th of August, there can be different provocations. And that is why the president and the government took decision to ban the celebrations and gatherings, and even the curfew will be implementing in several cities of Ukraine. I believe that people will be very cautious because they know how brutal, unpredictable Russian war can be.
Okay, the United States has said that it has intelligence that Russia is planning to launch new attacks against Ukraine's civilian and government facilities very soon. Do you think that this is another excuse, the 31st anniversary of independence of Ukraine from Russia, that this will give them an added excuse to further bombardment of Ukraine?
There cannot be any excuses, and we do think, even without any intelligence, that those missile attacks can be happening. Don't forget that as of today, uh, around 38,000 civilian infrastructure facilities being damaged or destroyed, including 29,000 residential buildings. So why the 31st anniversary of independence should have been an excuse for Russians to continue their brutal attacks?
What do you make of the situation where Russia is now uh, accusing the Ukraine for the supposed assassination of Daria Dugina? Um, However, Kiev denies involvement in the car bombing that killed the daughter of a prominent Russian ultra-nationalist, Alexander Dugin.
I have two answers for this question. First one, I would say my country is so busy to protect our land today and to try to keep the economy that is almost half destroyed moving, that the killing of Dugin's daughter would be not something that Ukrainians would be busy with. Don't you think so?
Mhm.
This is the first answer. Second answer is that since the beginning of invasion, so many Russian tycoons and oligarchs were not agreeing with the position of Putin and suddenly were killed or having heart attacks. So I think that people cannot in Russia cannot receive this information anymore, and Russia doesn't have even another choice than to blame Ukraine for all what it's doing. I cannot comment more on this.
President Zelensky has called for new punitive measures on Russia from Europe, which is bracing for energy shortages after Moscow announced a 3-day halt to gas flows to the continent in apparent retaliation to the European Union sanctions. Uh, uh, does that not further aggravate the situation that we already find the Ukrainian people in?
Uh, it does aggravate, and moreover, this is the part of blackmailing policy of Russia. Now we see it in energy sector. Now we see it in the nuclear sector. We've seen it in the food security sector. Definitely, it is not bringing peace. Though Putin, in his expressions and his imperialistic dreams, mentioned not once that he sees Russia from Lisbon to Vladivostok. So I think that he never would stop on Ukraine if European countries not help Ukraine to resist. It would continue to be happening in Europe. So the price that Europe is paying is very high as well, because their economy is also becoming weaker, and the sanctions are hurting usually not only the that side that is under sanctions, but also the side who is implementing sanctions. By saying this, particularly on the gas supplies, I think that one has to see also the positive thing in it, because the countries will be more looking again and again and at alternative or the green energies and develop this. And secondly, there will be more opportunities for other countries in other continents, including Africa, to supply those natural resources to replace Russia. It will it will need time, because we are hitting now to the winter season, and you know that it's very crucial for the economies of Europe and Ukraine, particularly. The gas supplies are making a big percent of our economy, but if we compare the global threat of losing independence and sovereign integrity and having the more global war ongoing on the continent, I think this is the price that we are ready to pay.
So, what would you like to see happening? Because at the start of the war, I think the global community assumed that after a couple of weeks, there would be some sort of resolution, and, the Ukrainians would carry on with life as per normal, not expecting for it to be dragged out for this long 6 months. And there's been really mass devastation in Ukraine. Your thoughts on going forward? Are there diplomatic talks in the pipeline? Should they be happening? Do you believe that the European Union and other international leaders should be more forceful in the war, in putting pressure on Putin to stop the war on Ukraine?
Yeah, so many questions, and all of them are very important. On the very first one about its anticipated European countries or the global community that it would be happening for that long. I think no one was ready for one country to invade another in the 21st century, even though we've seen the military buildup um, on our borders since the end of last year. We didn't even ask, believe till the end that this something that will happen. We have to think and talk about what Russia didn't anticipate, because the intention of so-called operation was to take control over Kyiv in 3 days. And when it never happened, then Russia started to pursue with another scenario, trying to get control over all Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and then going further and connecting the Crimean Peninsula with the land of Ukraine. So this is um, something that was not anticipated even by Putin himself, how far he is going to go. And another thing that he didn't anticipate is the solidarity with Ukraine by so many countries. Yes, there are still a lot of neutral countries. You might ask me what's going to happen, and I think that more and more countries do understand the consequences uh, of the that realities of war that they have in their countries. They will need to take a position, and we can do it together. If all of us put hands together, accuse Russia of doing that, we will be able to stop war, to stop killings of innocent people. And we will start to rebuild our economy in order to provide the food security. Now we see how important Ukraine is for the food security of the world. So it's the obligation now of every country to help us to stop this continuing attack. Meantime, the diplomacy can work only when Russia withdraw its troops from the territory of Ukraine, and when the last Russian soldier is leaving the Ukrainian land. We don't see it for now. That's why we will decide when negotiations will be happening as soon as we see that Russia withdraws its troops and stop its brutal attacks.
Ambassador, about a week ago, maybe a little longer, there was the threat, the possible threat of the Russians blowing up the nuclear plant in the Ukraine. Where are we on that situation? And God forbid, if it does happen, what would those consequences look like?
Well, to give you an idea, the nuclear plant that you are talking about is called Zaporizhia nuclear plant. This is the biggest nuclear plant in all the Europe and third biggest in the world. So if this scenario goes uh, up to the end when it's blown, then it's already not even about the existence of Ukraine. It's broader. And the damage to all the environment and world uh, climate system will be very destructive. Meantime, the Russians are blackmailing all the world with this nuclear terrorism. They are concentrating the hard artillery and they are bringing weapons to the plant controlled by them. Another concern is that the shellings that are happening not with very precise weapons. And if the mistake occurs, the consequences will be very unfortunate.
My final question, I'm not sure if this would indicate a glimmer of hope or should this not even be on the table for now. However, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is calling for the return of Crimea to Ukraine, a requirement he says is under international law. How does that fit into the bigger picture of the war on the Ukraine by the Russians?
I believe if a couple of months ago we were ready, if Russia would withdraw its troops from the territory of Ukraine, we would be ready to negotiate the future status of Crimea. Today, the public opinion and experts are saying that we really have to push to get back our territory in the recognized borders, internationally recognized borders, and Crimea is inclusive to it. Yesterday, Ukraine hosted the summit of Crimean Platform, the second summit, where the world leaders were showing solidarity uh, to Ukrainian territorial integrity. And we were discussing the issues not only about the territory of Crimea, but also those indigenous people, Crimean Tatars, that again are suppressed by Russians and forcing to leave the peninsula. The statements of Erdogan were coming in line with other statements made by 40 different presidents from Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And we are very glad that the Crimean platform is growing, the number of participants and people recognizing the Crimea being the part of Ukraine is growing.
Ambassador Lyubov Abravitova, Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, thank you for your time. We here at Salam Media extend our heartfelt sympathy and condolences for the losses you have suffered in Ukraine, on your people, on your cities, on your infrastructure. We really do feel for you. But at the same time, we also say heartiest of congratulations on your 31st year of independence from Russia. Go well and God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless.
That was the Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, Lyubov Abravitova, talking to us about the situation in the Ukraine. It is their 31st anniversary, and it is 6 months on, and they are still under siege by the Russians. We do hope and pray that that situation is resolved sooner rather than later, because obviously it has a huge global impact, very especially on fuel prices and food security issues. Standing by to talk to us is Sandile Swana about the national shutdown right here in South Africa. We're going for an ad break, and when we get back, we'll be joined by Sandile Swana, political analyst.